Before we dive into this amazing story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop it in the comments. Maybe you're tuning in from Dallas in the United States, Melbourne in Australia. It always amazes me how far these Wild West tales travel, and I truly enjoy hearing where they find a home. The sun sagged low over Dust Haven, its heat stretching across the wooden planks of the boardwalk and settling heavy into the air. Dust rose with every step of boots and hooves, turning the whole street into a haze of gold and grit. And there, at the heart of it all, stood a man in chains. His wrists were bound high to a post, his bare chest striped with dirt and old bruises. They called him Savage. Some spat the word with laughter, others with fear, but none with pity. Children peeked out from behind skirts, wide-eyed at the sight of him. Men leaned on the hitching rail, tossing coins, wagering how long he'd last before Sheriff Pike lost patience and hung him outright. Women whispered behind gloved hands, not daring to get too close. He stood silent through it all, eyes lowered, a figure carved from endurance and shame. It was then my voice cut through the dust and jeers. I did not plan it. It rose up from somewhere deep, a place where something aching and tender lived. "Don't hurt him," I heard myself say. My hand shook, but my voice did not. "I'll buy him." The square fell silent. Sheriff Pike's smirk curled slow, like a snake tasting air. He stepped forward, hat tilted, eyes sharp with amusement. "You'll what, Miss Boone?" The townsfolk leaned in, eager for spectacle. "I'll buy him," I repeated, louder now, though my throat burned. My fingers clutched the coins I'd meant for seed grain, for the spring that might never come. "He's not a beast. He's a man. I'll take him." The sheriff laughed long and cruel, but gold makes even cruelty pause. He took my coin with a flourish, holding it high for all to see before slipping it into his vest. With a mock bow, he released the chain. The man stumbled forward, too proud to fall, his eyes flicking up just long enough to meet mine. There was confusion there. And something else, something buried so deep even he seemed afraid to name it. Whispers rose around us like the hiss of snakes. "She's mad. What'll she do with him? It'll end in blood." The women shook their heads. The men spat. But I held my ground, though my palms were damp beneath my gloves. I walked beside him out of the square. The townsfolk parted, unwilling to brush against him. He walked stiffly, not behind me like a servant, not before me like a prisoner, but beside me. My heart trembled at the sight. On the edge of town, where the road widened, I handed him my water flask. He hesitated, then drank, careful not to empty it. A small mercy, but it struck me harder than any insult thrown in the square. By the time we reached the ranch, the sun had dipped low, streaking the land in purple and amber. The old house loomed quiet, lonely as it always did. I gave him bread and broth, set them on the table without word. He ate slow, as if measuring whether each bite was earned. When I left a blanket by the fire, he said nothing. But at dawn, I found it folded, neat as a prayer, resting by the hearthstone. The days that followed moved quiet as a creek under ice. He mended the fence without asking, hammered loose boards until the barn stood a little straighter. I watched from a porch, coffee warm in my hands, something stirring in me that I dared not name. When Mrs. Crandall rode by on her buggy, her voice rang sharp as glass. "That man'll slit your throat in the night, Eliza Boone. You'll regret the day you brought him here." Her words bit deep. Doubt gnawed at me. But then I saw him pause in the field, straightening, sweat glistening at his brow. He turned, and though he said nothing, his gaze held no malice, only a quiet, weary question. Could I still believe in him when no one else would? And in that silence, I chose to believe. Sometimes saving someone is not dragging them from fire, but setting them beside you, letting them remember what it feels like to be seen. Sunday came with the clang of the church bell, rolling across the valley like iron against the sky. Folks filed into the wooden chapel, boots scuffing the floorboards, voices hushed with expectation. When I walked in, Jonah beside me, the air shifted. Heads turned, whispers rippled like wind through dry grass. The preacher paused mid-sentence, his eyes flickering, then carried on as though he hadn't seen us at all. I sat tall in my pew, though my heart hammered against my ribs. Jonah stood at the back, his broad shoulders shadowed in the doorway, every eye measuring him against the stories they told of him, beast, heathen, savage. Their words pressed heavy, but I refused to bow. His silence became my courage. That night, by firelight, Jonah finally spoke. His voice was gravel rough from years of swallowing words. He told me of his mother, a Cheyenne woman whose name the world tried to erase, and of his father, a trapper who abandoned him to both sides' scorn. He spoke of raids, of running, of never being claimed by one world or the other. As he spoke, he did not look at me, only at the flames. But I listened not with pity, only with a sorrow that ran deep as a river. When at last he fell silent, I whispered only, "I see you, Jonah Greyhawk." His shoulders trembled just once. But Dust Haven was not a place to let peace linger. Sheriff Pike carried a bruise of humiliation from that day in the square, and men, like him, never forgot. One night, under a swollen moon, he came with half a dozen others, torches casting wild light across my yard. Their voices rose sharp and jeering, demanding Jonah be turned out, shouting that I had brought shame on the town. Jonah stepped forward, the firelight etching his face into lines of defiance and weariness. He raised his hands, offering himself up as though to say, "Better me than her." My breath caught. Before he could move farther, I stepped in front of him, arms outstretched, my voice breaking but firm. "You'll go through me first." The night hung still, save for the hiss of burning pine. The men sneered, spitting their disgust. Pike's face twisted with rage. He lunged forward, his rifle gleaming. But Jonah moved, not with the fury they expected, but with a steadiness born of endurance. He seized the weapon, wrenched it free, and for one heartbeat I thought the earth itself would split with violence. Yet Jonah did not fire. He cast the rifle into the dirt, his chest heaving, eyes locked not on them, but on me. His restraint struck harder than any bullet. The mob faltered, shaken by a truth they had never considered. A man mocked as savage had shown more mercy than they ever had. One by one, their guns lowered, shame pulling at their shoulders. Pike cursed, his pride torn ragged, and stormed away into the darkness, his men scattering like leaves in wind. The ranch stood quiet in the morning after. Jonah climbed to the barn roof, hammering shingles loose from the storm. I brought him coffee, warm against the dawn chill. Our hands brushed when I passed the cup. Neither of us pulled away. His eyes met mine, dark, steady, no longer bowed with shame. For the first time, I saw hope flicker there, fragile but alive. "You're no savage," I whispered. My voice trembled, but the words did not. "You're Jonah Greyhawk." He did not answer, only held my gaze as though those words stitched something back together inside him. And that was enough. Perhaps salvation does not come with trumpets or grand deliverance. Perhaps it comes quietly, through a coin spent, a meal shared, a weapon dropped instead of fired. Perhaps it comes when two souls, battered and bruised, choose to stand together against a world that insists they should not. So if you've ever been named by someone else's cruelty, if you've been called unworthy, remember this: there are those who will see you, even when the crowd does not. And sometimes in saving another, we find we've been saved ourselves.